You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Lockhart, Texas. And today, we've got my friend Isaac Weishaupt on the show. His content, here's why I love it, because you could call him, I use this term not as a pejorative, but as a compliment at times, a conspiracy kind of fella. But unlike some conspiracy type people where they're over the top and making outrageous claims, he's very articulate and he's very, let's say, skeptical in some of the things that we might hear in these circles. And so he examines them, he finds proof or finds that there is no proof of certain things. He's very good in that way. He's an Orthodox Christian, and we're bringing him on to talk about symbolism, the occult. We talk about some Orthodoxy. He's the founder of IlluminatiWatcher.com and the host of one of my favorite podcasts, Occult, Symbolism, and Pop Culture. He's been researching these things for a long, long time. You're about to find out just how deep he's gone into it. He's very good at relating things, kind of like Jay Dyer and Jamie, Jay's wife, how they discuss pop culture and some music and some movies and TV shows. Isaac does the same thing, and I find that stuff extremely fascinating. He's got an entire deep dive into Twin Peaks, and well, because of that, he's gotten me back into that series, and so I've been watching it and following along with his episodes, breaking the symbolism down and then the occult nature and all of the things that are way, 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 way deep into Twin Peaks. But I digress. Let's get him on right now. I finally got him here. Isaac Weishaupt, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Good. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me on, man. Sorry to be so, I don't know if elusive is the right word, but it's hard to nail me down sometimes. It's not because I'm busy or cool. Or not because I'm cool. It's more like I'm busy. But
you are busy. Yeah. Just the amount of content that I subscribe to your Patreon, so I get like the bonus stuff and all the Twin Peaks thing, which has subsequently got me back into Twin Peaks as an adult. I'm often like, how does he have time to do anything else? It's a lot of content you put out, so it's good. It's recommended to all those listening. Illuminati Watcher. I have to say, I can't remember. I think maybe the first time I heard of you was on my friend Mark Claire's show, but I'm not positive. But the second I heard your last name, I was like, wait a second. I have a long history of reading some of these conspiracy books. That last name sounds familiar, and it surely is not his actual last name. So I'll let you do kind of a quick intro for my audience, and then we'll kind of dive deep into your how you got into some of these things, and then there's all kinds of directions we can take it.
Oh, yeah, man. Yes. I did Mark Claire's show. I think it was last year, and, you teased me with Twin Peaks there. We can hijack this whole show and just talk Twin Peaks. I want to talk to you about it, though. Let's go back to that, because you're, I respect and look up to people that it sounds like you had watched the show already. Maybe, do you go back to the early when it first released in 1990?
Yes, I'm old. I'm 47.
Okay.
And when it was on, this is interesting knowing my dad like I do. He is a hardcore Republican, Protestant, evangelical guy. And he was obsessed with that show. Not obsessed. Those kind of guys don't get obsessed with TV shows so much. But we watched every episode together. And I think if I were to talk to him now and go, what'd you think about this symbolism? And this, he'd be like, what? No, it's none of that. He just watched it because he found it compelling. And I watched every episode with him and then saw the movie in the theaters. And then some girlfriends of mine as an adult have been obsessed with it. Like they go to these conferences or festivals or whatever for it. And I tried to get back into it, including the one on, was it HBO? Whatever, they released a series in the last few years. And I was like, okay, I'm not into it now. It's kind of boring or weird. And then I started listening to your stuff on it. And I'm like, all right, let me get back into it again. And so now I watch it with a different mindset and perspective, and I'm trying to kind of push through it in that sense.
Did you watch season 3 yet?
No, and you always say,
Okay.
wait till you get to season 3. I know I need to do that too.
Oh man, this is going to be good. Okay, we're going to come back to Twin Peaks here in a minute. Let me
Okay.
do my little origin story spiel for folks, and also thank you for being on the Patreon team, man. I appreciate that. You supporters, I always say supporters keep the show alive, and I mean that the most. It affords me the time. I mean, sometimes I'm buying these books that are $150. I got to buy from England, and it just takes time to read this stuff and regurgitate it. And man, you guys really make the show happen. So thank you personally. Now, the origin story for folks who don't know who I am or what my spiel is. Let's go. I'll try to give you a 5-minute sort of history. It started back in, I'm 44 years old. So
Okay.
I grew up and watched tons of stuff in the 80s and 90s, horror movies, paranormal stuff, X-Files. I always had interest in stuff like that. And I was always interested in counterculture stuff. I was, into gangster rap when it first broke. Dr. Dre's The Chronic. I remember my buddy brought over the cassette tape and it blew my mind. I was like, oh, this is incredible. They're saying the N-word. I can't believe these guys are saying the N-word. A suburban white guy from PA. And
where in PA?
I was born in Allentown, but I grew up mostly in Lancaster.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Are you familiar with PA?
I have an ex-girlfriend that I'm still close with, and her sister live in PA. In a very small town called Evansburg near Johnstown. And so until I dated her, I'd never been to the state, but now I've been there a lot. So,
okay. Yeah. So the Lancaster got put on the map. I grew up near like Reading and Lidditz because Taylor Swift is from Reading, PA.
I hear, yes.
And it brought in near Lidditz, I think, is where it blew up because now in Lidditz is where a lot of these big concert tours, they put on the production and do the sort of dress rehearsals at this, I don't know, some place in Lidditz. I don't live there anymore. I live in Utah now. But anyways, yeah, so I grew up with the counterculture interests, Ice-T, Body Count. I grew up very drawn into a lot of these sort of rebellious punk sort of scene type stuff.
Me too.
And it's ironic, we'll come back to Twin Peaks, of course, but I didn't watch Twin Peaks at all in 90 and 91. I've heard of it, but it didn't hit my radar at all. And it should have, considering my interest in horror movies and all this stuff back then. But then I would say like my formative red pill moments were, man, I was always interested in alien stuff. Then I was in the military and my buddy put me on to Bill Cooper in 2002, The Old Pale Horse. So I read that. Fascinating read. And that was the first time a lot of these ideas entered my subconscious. And even back then and all the way in the 2000s, I always thought, no, these are interesting and they're fun and I like learning this stuff, but I wasn't like all in on it necessarily. Then in 2003, I get out of the military and my wife is Greek Orthodox. And I know you wanted to talk spirituality a little bit, and I think that's probably the most important question, honestly. I grew up in a non-denominational Church of the Nazarene.
Oh, okay.
And are you familiar with that?
I am. One of my Orthodox priest friend of mine, friend of the show, Father John Whiteford, grew up Nazarene, so he's told me about it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, man, we should link up again here. I don't know if we're gonna get through all this in an hour. So I grew up in the Church of Nazarene. My mom, she was into the church, right? It was where she grew up. Her parents took her there, all that stuff, right? And I never liked it. I didn't like it at all. We would go to church Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and then Wednesday evening. And it was too much church for me. I didn't like it. And my dad didn't go. My dad was a Christian. And he was so, my dad, he died in 2012. So I never had great conversations with him. I wouldn't say we didn't get along is the right way to describe it, but we always had this sort of barrier between us. I talked to my mom about it recently and it was kind of more, I always thought he looked down upon me. Like he thought I was never going to cut it as a real man, quote unquote. 'Cause he's always trying to toughen me up. And I'm always been a sensitive guy. And I don't know. Like, these are conversations I wish I could have with my father, but he was an interesting guy. He believed in Christ. He was a law enforcement guy, so he had a lot of sort of right-wing Republican tendencies, but then he was socially very liberal. Like, he would let me watch pretty much anything I wanted to watch. And he was an interesting guy. So, but he didn't like my mom's, the Nazarene church either. So I don't know if that was the influence, but it was horrible because I remember in the 80s, you know, we bought a Nintendo Super Mario Bros., the original Nintendo, and my dad would be playing it on Sunday, and then I'd have to go back to church, and I was like, no, you know, it was like, it was torture for me. Or football was on, and I couldn't watch it. My dad would be home watching it, chilling. I'd be like, I'm going to stay home with dad, and it, you know, my dad supported my mom's decision and was like, no, you go to church, you know, even though he didn't go, but he read the Bible. He read the Bible all the time. And so anyways, when I was 16, they didn't make me go to church anymore. So I was like, bet, I'm not doing it. I don't like it. This isn't for me, you know, because the Nazarene church was more of a, I don't know, I call it more of a rock band church, you know. They kind of, you know, it was like 30 minutes of you stand up and you sway and you sing along, and then 30 minutes of the preacher giving his sermon, whatever. Yeah. And I just didn't like it. I felt like it was too much. I don't know what it was, man. I couldn't gel with it. It didn't vibe with me. I couldn't get along with people in the church. I don't know. I don't want to get into too deep into like that discussion. Ironically, Charles Manson, what I read, he grew up and went to a church of Nazarene as well. And my dad has had a lifelong fascination with Charles Manson, which again, we could talk about that for a full hour. Because my dad was pen pal friends with Michael Channels, and he had collected all of this, you know, they call it murderabilia nowadays, all this Charles Manson stuff, his hair. I inherited, that was my inheritance when my dad died, is I got all his Manson stuff. Wow. So I got like Charles Manson's hair and his letters and all kinds of crazy stuff. So anyway, so I stopped going to church when I was 16, joined the military. I'm in the Air Force, working munitions, and I was an ammo troop. And then my buddy in ammo put me on to Bill Cooper. I read the book. I get out 2003. Me and my wife, current wife, we decided to get married, and she's Greek Orthodox. Not like hardcore. Like, she didn't go every day. She was, you know, submarine Orthodox. Popped up for Easter and Christmas kind of thing. And we went in. She's like, well, I'd like to get married in my church if that's cool. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I assumed all Christianity branches were the same at this point.
Your mind was about to be blown.
Yeah. So I go, I'll never forget, I was stationed down in Florida before I got out, and I went down there, and I went to the priest, and he was kind of hit me up like, okay, what's your beliefs? You know, you said you were in Church of Nazarene, and you know, it's very similar enough, I thought. And he said, well, what do you think about the communion? And I was like, well, I mean, it's, you know, I know it's not actually blood. I know it's not actually like someone's flesh we're eating. And he got mad at me, and I was like, whoa.
Wrong. Yes.
Wrong. And then he taught me about transubstantiation and all this stuff, right? And I went through catechism, and I understood now the mysteries of the communion. And I'm bought in on the Orthodox faith. I was super into Orthodoxy in the 2000s. And I went to book clubs and all the stuff, right? And then in the mid 2000s, a different buddy of mine turns me on to David Icke, Freedom Road VHS cassette. And I'm watching this thing, and he's similar to Bill Cooper, putting together a global conspiracy of sorts with aliens and controllers and all this crazy stuff. And I was super into David Icke for a while. Then I'm watching the time. I went way past 5 minutes. Let's move along. Okay. So 2011, I've got a break before I started grad school, and I decided to start a blog, IlluminatiWatcher.com, for a variety of reasons. And I just was, you know, no intentions of it really being this whole, you know, personality that is Isaac Weishaupt today. And I was blogging about conspiracies and rap videos and horror movies and all just things that I was interested in. And then next thing you know, a radio show out of Oklahoma hits me up, the Big Mad Radio Show or something like that. They say, hey, we want to have you on our show. We're doing a segment about conspiracy theories. I said, all right, cool. So they said, well, what's your name? Because I didn't have a name at this time. I just went by the Illuminati Watcher. And I said, well, I don't know. Let me get back to you, because I wanted to remain anonymous. So I chose Isaac Weishaupt. as a play on the word Illuminati watcher, I and W, right? And Weishaupt, of course, is the name of the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt. And, of course, in hindsight, terrible idea. Don't ever choose an alias like that if you're going to be in the world of conspiracy, because in the conspiracy world, everybody eats their own. And now every show I go on and every person who discovers me is like, wait a minute, you're a disinformation agent. You're a part of the Illuminati. You're in the bloodlines. I'm like, no, it's not my real name. I have to explain it. But whatever. At this point, I'm in too deep to go back. So that's what my alias is, not my real name. And then the short version of the last 13 years since I started the blog was this ever expanding rabbit hole of writing books. I've written 9 books. I'm working on my 10th right now about Twin Peaks. I've been on so many platforms that kicked me off, YouTube and Vimeo, and then Google shadow banned me and they crushed my blog basically. And I've seen enough that I'm like, okay, I believe all this stuff because I try to be the most rational, open-minded conspiracy theorist. I point out the symbolism. I talk about where it comes from and give people resources. And I try not to condemn these artists like Taylor Swift, for instance. Because I don't have a problem with these celebrities. I don't care. I don't think they understand what they're doing. I don't think they understand the role they play in a bigger system.
Right.
So I don't want people to get mad at Taylor Swift. I don't have a problem with her. I don't know. But they want to paint it in a light that I'm bullying them, and that's how they defend the choices to censor me. So yeah, that's kind of the journey I've been on, and it opened up a lot of crazy doors. And like I got to be on Coast to Coast AM last year. That was kind of the peak of the mountain for me. And speaking of mountains, I was on Mount Crushmore for Tinfoil Hat podcast, which is a huge honor. I mean, that's a big show. It goes on, and it's been an interesting journey. And since 2020, I've had a lot of existential crises of what I want this to look like and what I want to support and what I think is happening with the conspiracy movement, because it's not the same as it was in 2011. But of course, we can get into all that. But that's the origin story. That's the background. And I don't know. I'll let you take it back.
There's a lot of similarities that tie in with me. I went to a mega church when I was a teenager. It's one that you mentioned. You did a 2-part series on the kind of Zionism, and then you ended it with the Orthodox Christian perspective on a lot of things. It was wonderful. And it tied things in with me. So I went to John. So you mentioned it. John Hagee was the pastor that I used to go to when I was a teenager. And you mentioned it in that episode, like the biggest Zionist, I would say, mouthpiece that's not a politician. I mean, he might as well be, but he's a pastor. And so in my teenage years, I was like, well, all these things he says, that's all I knew. And then I term churches like that a lot of the times as atheist factories, because that's what it made me. Didn't hold any roots. It didn't have any impassioned mysteries or meaning or anything like that. So I was gone. And then I got into Alex Jones, David Icke, all of these people like that, because in Austin, where I was at the time, Alex there was an FM, of all things, there was an FM talk radio station that was all conspiracy stuff. My friend Jack Blood was on there. Alex was on there.
I know. I'm familiar with Jack Blood. Is he still on the scene, or
he's up in Seattle? But yeah, he's still doing a radio show.
Okay, he was one of the early sort of people I got into when I started taking it serious, the conspiracy stuff. Him and Freeman Fly, Freeman's from Texas, Austin.
Yep.
Okay.
So I was in that scene a bit. Ron Paul was coming on Alex's show, so I got into the libertarian politics and whatnot. And even back then, it's amazing to think in Austin at this movie theater that's a chain there called the Alamo Drafthouse, they would have Alex's premieres, like for his documentary films, like shown. In Austin, Texas, they would absolutely not ever do that anymore, by the way. Alex is persona non grata. Well, although I will say with this scene having Joe Rogan on it now and like there is a little bit of some bubbling up of some of that stuff, but boy, they hated him for a long time.
The people of Austin hated Alex Jones?
Austin's a very left-wing town. It used to be left-wing in the kind of fun, crunchy hippie way. And so then he was okay because he was anti-war and he didn't like Bush and that kind of thing. But once it became more of like the rich white lady liberal Austin that it is now, they don't like anything that has to do with weirdos or conspiracy people or Alex.
Yeah,
or that kind of
that's
thing.
another component here, because I identify more with the crunchy liberal left kind of hippie vibe, and it kind of turned, liberalism turned into something I can't even recognize anymore.
It's Puritanism in my opinion.
It's really bizarre. But go ahead. Sorry, I don't want.
No, so I got in through all of that. I was an atheist. Then, thank God, I found Orthodoxy just a few years ago and started diving into this as a whole worldview. And it was like, well, it actually does tie in with some of the conspiratorial stuff. It makes sense through an Orthodox lens if you look at it as a spiritual battle between good and evil, spiritual warfare that happens. Evil has so many manifestations, and some of them are some of the things I talk about, some of the things you talk about. So, like the Illuminati, that could be one. And can you define what that is? Because I think I know what it is. I've come up reading about it and the history of it and the Bavarian sect and whatnot. But it is a term I think some of my listeners are going to go, I always hear that word. What is that?
Yeah, and there's a couple, like the official sort of Webster dictionary version would tell you that the Illuminati is the Bavarian Illuminati from, May 1st, 1776 by Adam Weishaupt. And, it was just a bunch of radical thought leaders who wanted democracy and all this, that, and the other. But the definition that I would subscribe to, and the one that most conspiracy people are talking about, is a sort of unnamed group of folks, and we don't really know with 100% certainty who is in it. And I don't know how structured this is exactly, but it's like, it seems to me, and I don't get into geopolitical, type of events. I'm not like when they're doing Bilderberg or Council of Foreign Relations meetings in Davos. Like I don't get into that. Like I'm not like, that's an Alex Jones type of thing that, I just don't get into that. But because I niched out, I used to, right? And I niched down to something that to me seems the most tangible, the most real, the most interesting as well. And again, that is viewed through the Orthodoxy lens, which I do want to, let me write a note here. I want to come back to Orthodoxy as an influence on this world I live in. But the Illuminati, I think, are just, a group of thought leaders going back through time. That would be you could see the sort of DNA going back to, and again, it's probably confusing for folks because I am an Orthodox Christian. I don't attend church every week. I was very regular for a long time, and then I sort of chilled out for a while, and now I'm kind of, it's not like I'm not a believer or nothing. I just, I don't know, I got to find the passion to get back into church. I haven't been in a few years. And I wonder about the thoughts and the concepts of the Illuminati and the occult concepts they push. I don't know, like the verdict isn't clear to me as to what we're looking at. I think there's a branch of the occult and the Illuminati that I don't agree with. And then I think there's a branch that I think, well, maybe there's something there that's, that makes sense. But we're talking about folks that want to they want to harness knowledge and wisdom from these dark occult Luciferian forces. And that you could see this, this knowledge was handed down through various mystery schools of, ancient Egypt and Rome and secret societies. And when you study the history of secret societies, like in the Hellfire Caves with Francis Dashwood, and they're doing these sort of satanic orgies and things like that, you see that there is a cabal in a way of, and it tends to be mostly ultra wealthy, ultra connected folks who are in control of others and believe that they are superior to most of us. They view us as something lesser than, as cattle, as sheep. That's kind of a I don't know, the best way I could describe who the Illuminati is. And if you wanted me to name names, I would say I'm sure people like Bill Gates might be somewhere in the ballpark of that. What's his name? Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab, of course. Look at the things he's talking about with the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. These are their attitudes that they put on display. And I think behind the scenes, they have a much darker view of us. And I think they're trying to convince, they use a variety of sort of, concepts that they put out there to control us, I think. So that's what I refer to when I talk about the Illuminati.
I think for like a normie, it should be easier to grasp this concept than it ever was before, because I think most people, maybe I'm going too far on a weak limb here, but let's see. Most people could look at the president right now and figure he's probably not in control, right? I think most people, even if you're a Democrat and you hate Trump, would go, well, Biden's the president, but I think other people are in control. It seems obvious that way. Mm-hmm. Rather than like when Obama was the president or Trump, there's a lot of people like, no, he's large and in charge. And now it seems like it should be easier for most people to go, maybe there is a group behind the scenes pulling strings. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's something that I think. So in 2020, everything changed, and obviously for a variety of reasons. And I can quantify this for people that aren't aware of this, because like I said, since 2011, I've managed a blog. 2014, I started podcasting. Around that time, I started the YouTube, which got kicked off. So let's forget that. But and I've been writing books. So I see web traffic, I see book sales, I see podcast downloads, right? And in 2020, it went through the roof. And before it was just like, okay, this is cool. It kind of helps me, like, I could pay the hosting fees and go out to dinner a few times a month. Like, this is cool. 2020, now it's like, oh, I might be able to quit my day job, right? We're talking a significant interest. And the best I can explain would be, I think that there was a universal mistrust in institutions, justifiably so,
right?
Because people started questioning the mainstream media and saying, and the government, and throwing the Black Lives Matter situation going on in 2020. People started questioning the police. I mean, these are all institutions that for decades pretty much just went trusted. Everyone trusted the news. You trusted, I mean, to an extent, right? Like not everyone was totally all in, but I think 2020, and then, throw in that the government said, oh yeah, there are unidentified aerial phenomenon that we're not sure what they are, basically is what they told us. Discounting the last 80 years of them dismissing and gaslighting people about aliens and UFOs and things in the sky. And again, we could do shows and shows about what that really means and is it really happening. But nonetheless, 2020 poked holes in pretty much the social construct that everyone had in their minds. And people, and I'm not even going down the road of I don't want to get you kicked off of wherever you're on, but going down the road of the obvious thing that happened in 2020. I mean, all these things, it induces so much anxiety when the concept you have of what America is and what our world is, and you see it crumbling apart, and you start, and that's why there was so much conflict. Everyone starts fighting because everyone's fighting over their version of reality of what they think is real and who to trust and what to believe. And all of a sudden we're like, wait a minute, maybe no one's in control, and maybe no one knows what's really going on. And now they're questioning, well, maybe they're deceiving us. And, because they'll come out and say one thing, and then a month later they came out and said, no, don't do that. Do this other thing now. And people are like, well, wait a minute. Where's the proof of any of these things you're talking about? And most of the time you don't get it. And I think that was a turning point. And you could look at it, if this is a coordinated event, from the idea of an occult ritual, right? Because in an occult ritual, much like the initiation rites of the Freemasons, you have to be blinded in ignorance with your mask on, and then when the initiation is over, they open your eyes to the world. And the question is, was this either allowed to happen or coordinated to happen in order to cause a massive change in the world that we live in? Because they know that with technology, there's going to be this sort of birthing of a new species to replace the human species. That's something, the conspiracy world has been talking about. I've been talking about it since 2011. This idea of a matrix, the AI, singularity, all these things are happening.
Right.
And these Illuminati types, the people that think about global issues and have they're like when on the Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs, their bottom levels, they're done. Like they're at the top and they're like good. They got money for the rest of their life. Their kids are set. Their whole family's set. Like they're good. So now they're, the human nature is, okay, what's the next thing I can work on or fix?
Yes.
Like they're not just going to go ride jet skis all day.
Right.
And they think, oh, we gotta evolve humanity into something better because they subscribe to a satanic doctrine. They don't know it, but they subscribe to a satanic doctrine that, we're all just like, in the Matrix, they tell you flat out. They're like, Agent Smith's like, oh, you're just a virus. You're a germ spreading on the earth. And that's I think with the mentality that they ultimately embrace, and they start trying to explore how to facilitate this evolution of taking us down the path of post-human, they call it transhumanism, right?
Right. Yes.
But yeah, there's lots of weird stuff that happened that caused a lot of people to start thinking twice about reality. And we're still living through this state of flux right now of people, because I observed it with my own eyes, the alternative mainstream media birth, which is new. It used to be all us conspiracy guys were, fringy and sometimes fun. It was like watching Ancient Aliens back in the day. It was just, oh, this is fun. Like, ooh, I'm learning a little something, maybe.
Yep.
And then it became real. And now you're seeing, I think that the state of conspiracy got weird because you've got the mainstream media who we always condemned as conspiracy theorists. We always said, oh my gosh, they're just trying to, steal your louche. They come up with stories to get you outraged. And because they got a 24/7 news cycle that they started in the 80s, and they got to constantly keep you hooked and outraged. And now the conspiracy people have taken that same formula and they do the same thing. So you've got the mainstream media that pushes news stories, and then you got the alternative conspiracy mainstream that plays off of those news stories. And then, it just seems like they're both kind of taking us away from what really matters. And there was a time 10 years ago where if we had this conversation, I would have told you, hey, I don't really get into the spirituality aspect and Christianity because, religion is hard. It takes faith. And like, sometimes my faith is kind of bad and I'm not, I question everything. But the more I've gone down this road, the more I say, oh no, this is the only thing that matters.
Yes.
And I do think that, because a lot of people say, they're like, I don't know how you look at this stuff all the time, all this dark stuff, and then you can sleep at night. And I'm still trying to figure out how to explain that. I don't know. Maybe it's a gift, but I think it's because I do know that ultimately when we die, like this isn't it. Like I do believe that God put our spirits in these bodies to experience this world.
Yes.
And you try to do your best of what Christ was saying of like loving other people. And not to mention, okay, let's say you want to be one of these sort of freedom fighters who wants to tear apart every story and fight with your neighbors and try to explain to them like, oh, the government's out to get you, right? Like there's merit to that. I agree. But is that making your life better or worse ultimately?
Right.
And are you even convincing people? People are hard to convince.
Yes. I
like,
agree.
Like, how does that make you? I want to experience this life for the positive. I want to feel good in this life because I know this isn't forever. And at some point, we're moving on to the next thing.
There is an element of being so anti-government or anti even Illuminati, whatever, that you start to hold that thing up as an idol because idolatry or worship just means where your attention's focused on the most. And I think there's a tendency and a blind spot sometimes for people in our circles to put their attention on all this bad stuff. Oh, they're coming. This happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe realize some of that is going on, but if you can put some of your attention on Christ, I think it's at least better for your soul. You were good. I want to get to Orthodoxy too, but one of the things I love hearing, and it's fascinating and it doesn't scare me. It just seems real and it's interesting, is the occult symbolism stuff that you talk about. Have you seen an increase in that type of thing, not the attention to it like people like us, but just the actual, I mean, with pop culture and everything, more and more of this occultism and things like that since 2020? Or how what's that scale like for you?
Okay, so I mean, sometimes it depends on what day you ask me this question. Obviously going back to, Black Sabbath or whatever, there's been pop culture talking about Satan and things like that. But it does seem that things lately have taken more of an overt turn towards Satanism.
Yes, I think so too.
It just feels that way. And I guess I always try to back things up with evidence instead of just how I feel. But like, look at the popularity of Lil Uzi Vert, who's a rapper who is openly a Satanist. His name it's a play on the word Lucifer, and he's got like an inverted cross tattooed on his tongue, and he loves Marilyn Manson, who's an honorary priest in the Church of Satan. Because we guys like us grew up in the 90s, like Marilyn Manson's been around since then,
Right.
So, and he was very controversial when he came out.
Yes.
Which is funny. Okay, maybe we're proving this here now that we're talking about it, because when Marilyn Manson came to popularity, I mean, he was the Antichrist and everyone hated him, and he wasn't, I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like maybe he didn't get as much playtime on the radio, or MTV would maybe put his videos on late at night because it was too much, right?
It was fringe. There was an element of fringe to it. And now it's just more like, you'd be fringe if you were like an Orthodox rapper or something like that. That would be fringe. Yeah,
because a guy like Lil Uzi Vert, he's on the top 40 now. That's about as mainstream as you can get. Like, these guys aren't because I've been a lifelong hip hop fan, and I still am. But I'd be lying to myself if I said, "Oh yeah, this is all like positive. There's nothing bad that can come of this," because this is something I don't remember what show I did. I just talked about this, but it's an interesting place to be in for me, because I hear the rap songs, and of course everyone knows what, most of this drill rap and trap, they're, talking about the lifestyle of being in a gang or selling drugs or shooting people or killing people, or, having frivolous relationships with women, we'll say, to keep it clean. And I get that on one hand, because I grew up with some friends that, like, we were degenerates. So I understand. Like, I don't sit here and say, like, people live like that. How dare they live like that? Yeah. Like I get it. That's how people live, man.
Yes.
And these people are maybe just explaining their experiences, but it does become a point where you see that it's influencing people who think they look up to these rappers like they're gods to them. And that's the way the system is all these celebrities are gods and goddesses. It's like the Roman pantheon.
Yep.
We're living in a pagan sort of world here. And surely, without a doubt, it's got influence on young people who maybe they have that opportunity. It wasn't like I grew up in a town where they were like, I had to resist selling drugs or having a gun. Like, I didn't live like that, but I'm sure there's people that live like that. And when their favorite person on earth is talking about how they do it, well, of course that's going to influence them to do that. And what is that? I mean, we're talking about murder here. We're talking about negativity. This is evil stuff. And it's just so acceptable. I was just talking to my wife about this, like how hip hop, it seemed, growing up in the 90s, the genres were very distinct.
Yes.
And I loved all of them. I liked pop music. I liked grunge rock. I liked speed metal. I liked rap music and punk music, all that stuff. And then now today, I mean, it's like one genre. They just put it on a blender and they're like, here you go.
Yeah.
And that includes all these Satanists. Doja Cat, I mean, she's pushing out an insane amount of Satanism now. I mean, it's wild. And a lot of this stuff, I don't know if Doja Cat is into worshiping Satan, but she's missing a good opportunity if she's not. But her handlers, handlers know some stuff. Like they're putting her dressed up as the Scarlet Woman. Like this isn't just some 80s shtick of wearing devil horns in the video to scare people.
Right.
I mean, this is something different, man. And so, see, like I said, you ask me on a certain day, I'll answer the question differently. But now that we're talking about it, I'm like, it seems that this is, and of course we go on all day. We got Lil Nas X, who was, twerking on Satan. And now, by the way, to Lil Nas X, I think Friday the 19th, he's supposed to release a video of I guess he's now converted to Christ.
Oh,
I don't know what that is, but that's
okay.
what he said. That's what he's saying. So anyway,
I have a question to ask that just popped in my mind, and I only know of Doja Cat from your episodes on this person, and I will say this: it seems like you just said, well, I don't know that she's a Satanist, but at least her handlers knows. It seems to me like she must be. And then I've heard people, and you actually alluded to it earlier. It's always just been a quick aside. They'll say something about Taylor Swift and something occulty, and then kind of move on. What is Taylor Swift? Because I don't know any Taylor Swift songs. Unfortunately, I love the NFL, so I can't stop seeing her when they show Chiefs games. But what is her role in any of this? I don't suspect that she worships Satan herself. I don't know. But what do you think her role is in this kind of genre?
Are you talking about Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
I don't follow Taylor Swift either.
Okay.
The
two men in their 40s with muscles and tattoos. I guess that's not our demographic.
And like I always say, it's like Beyonce. I don't like her music, but it's not for me. Same with Taylor Swift. I don't like her music, but it's not for me. Like, it's fine, whatever. You won't catch me listening to it. The Taylor Swift is interesting. Let me tell you the background here. I'm gonna air her business out, because when I had this YouTube channel in 2013 or 12, I started it. It blew up pretty good. I had a few virals, and around 2016, I was peaking out. I had about 75,000 subscribers.
Wow!
I get millions of views. I was like, I was in the same thing. You could ask my wife. Over the years, I've had these sort of cycles of fantasy delusions of quitting the day job, and then they pull the rug out from under me, and I'm back down. I'm like, oh boy, yeah, there's no stability here. And then I'll build up. So now I'm in like my second cycle. I'm building up on my YouTube thing, and I'm like, oh, here we go. This is great. And I made a video where I merely explained the symbolism of this. Is, like I said, this is like 2016 or maybe 17. I don't remember. She had a video, and I don't know the name of it. I could find out, where she had symbolism of witchcraft in the video and transhumanism and a variety of things from what I remember. And I talked about it on my YouTube video. I said, hey, look, here's the Taylor Swift video. Here's some images of what I'm talking about. And I explained the symbolism. Again, nothing negative. Not one negative word said like, oh yeah, Taylor Swift's a witch. She's a demonic witch. Like, I didn't say stuff like that. That's sensational and whatever. And the next morning I get up and I check my email, and it said they shut my YouTube channel down. I go in there and I look at the complaint, and it was a violation of community guidelines, which, as you know, when you dig into it, they never tell you what that means. You have no idea. And I looked at the complainant, and the name was Big Red Media, or Big Red Dog Media, or something like that. And I said, who the heck is that? So I Google it. Turns out that's her management agency.
Oh.
Which I found really bizarre. And like I said, to put it in perspective, 75,000 subs isn't a ton, but it's a lot.
It's a lot.
I had several videos that had 1 to 2 million views that were, they would get on this. I think this is back in the day when YouTube would let conspiracy stuff sort of fly.
Yes. Yeah.
And, so they would, just rack it up, man. They would just go. Beyonce was a big one I had. But anyways, this Taylor Swift video, they shut it down immediately. And I think that, and I took my little training or whatever, got back in, and then about a month later they permanently shut it down, because I did the same thing with an Ariana Grande song. But Taylor Swift, I honestly don't think she's aware of any of this occult. Well, I don't know, maybe if you look at those concerts she's been doing, there's a lot of witch symbolism. Again, there's the witch thing we talked about 7 years ago. There's a lot of symbolism of a witch ritual, and people say, they're like, oh no, she's, just showing the, empowerment of females. Cause witches are, a female sort of thing. So I get that. Like, I get that idea, but we can't deny, it's like Harry Potter, right? Sure. It's a kid's story. I get it. It's fantasy. It's fun. I've watched all the movies. It's fine. But we'd be lying if we said, oh, there's zero influence on getting young kids into the occult through this. I have, and look, I say this, and I'm picking on. I have friends, close friends, that have the Harry Potter tattoo. Deathly Hallows symbol, which is the Freemason symbol. It came to J.K. Rowling in a dream and a vision, like all these occult things do. And the fact of the matter is that that the Harry Potter thing missed our generation, by a few years. So I was already in my 20s when Harry Potter became popular, but a lot of people grew up. They were, I don't know. Well, they're in their teens and they got into it, and they, sure enough, like they're interested in occult things, astrology and tarot, and in today's world, that's all very sort of okay and safe.
It's
But
trendy.
it's trendy, and like I'm not a hard ass. I don't care. Like if people do that stuff, I mean, I meditate, which if you talk to a certain Orthodox priest, they would tell you, look, you shouldn't do any of this stuff. You're messing with demonic forces with all of these things.
Yes.
Like Father Seraphim Rose was another one of my red pill daddies, I call it.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the 2000s, when I was going to the Orthodox book clubs, we would read all these books from monks and things like that and church leaders, and it was my turn to pick a book, and I picked Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future.
Yes.
And I mean, the guy, he wrote it in the 60s, and I mean, you couldn't be more on the money with something than this guy was. I don't know. And that's where I live in both worlds, because on the one hand, I do think Christians can be overzealous on a lot of things.
Uh-huh.
And I think if something brings people peace and happiness in their life and allows them to be a good human being, I don't know. I have a hard time condemning that. But like with magic, there's white magic and black magic. I don't know. I'd be concerned if it was black magic. That's something that I would wholly condemn, but white magic where they're just, I don't know, showing love to nature, which is God's creation. Like I think you could route that towards Christ, all these things. Same with meditation. You could just route that to prayer. I have a prayer rope. I mean, I could do that too.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not here to judge or tell anyone what to do. I'm just here to talk about the symbolism and the facts of the matter. And that's kind of to finish the question about Taylor Swift. She has definitely got a role to play in terms of, I'm sure they're opening doors for her and telling her what to do on some level. I mean, she's what is she, like a billionaire now? Like she's a whole economy on herself when she comes to these towns.
Yep.
I mean, there's people behind that. No one organically just does that on their own.
Right.
So she for sure has to answer to somebody.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's not very many shows or episodes where you go from Taylor Swift to the Book of Enoch. So I can't make the most like delightfully beautiful transition, but I do want to talk about the Book of Enoch. It's all overarching spirituality stuff we're talking about in symbolism. You are about to do, or maybe you've done already, a couple of episodes on the Book of Enoch. For the people listening that don't know what in the world that is, can you talk about that?
Yes, for sure. This is something that I've been casually research. As a researcher, my library is a good example of how I research. I have probably 30 books sitting on my nightstand here.
Yes, me too. That's funny.
I read them 5 pages at a time. And it's going to take me years to get through all these books. Unless something big happens that really is like, oh, I got to finish this book. Then I'll just devote my time and plow through it. Right. But the Book of Enoch is one of these subjects that I've been casually interested in a long time. I've been taking notes for about a year, and I actually recorded the show. I got to release it. It's going to be about an hour, 15 minutes I wanted it to be longer. I wanted it to be multiple parts, but this Miami mall with the conspiracies about Nephilim walking around.
Yep.
It seemed like a good opportunity because people are interested in the stuff. So when people are interested, I try to get the things out there.
Yep.
But we're talking about, these were books. They were written over a variety of different sources and years. The earliest ones, like the first Book of Enoch, from what I read, they think it's about 300 years before Christ. And it expands, and they found these books in 1947 as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Book of Enoch basically elaborates on the story of Genesis, that there were some fallen angels called the Watchers that came to Earth. They spread depravity. They couldn't resist the human women, so they procreated with the women and made this race of giants called the Nephilim. And the Book of Enoch elaborates on it much more than you would read about in Genesis. It talks about Enoch's visions and where Enoch went when God took him up, and how he had these apocalyptic visions and things like this. But the Book of Enoch is it talks about how the Watchers, the fallen angels, taught the women and the people about occult magic, about cannibalism, forbidden arts of astrology, conjurations, charms, all these things that I've heard of from the Orthodox, from a variety of Orthodox, priests and figures. And again, when people, I've talked to, because I've had a few priests over my years when I was more active in the church, and each of them has a different sort of flavor. Some of them are more simple, and they'll tell me stuff like, look, don't worry about all this stuff. Just focus on trying to be a good person, pray, be good, try to follow Christ. Then I had one priest who was very monastic, and he was, these were all like he was very much, when Da Vinci Code came out, he was like, you're not reading that book. Like, that's how devout he was, because Da Vinci Code has a lot of occult sort of concepts in there. But for me, I'm kind of more of a free thinker, man. Like, don't tell me what I can read and not read. But I do understand his motivation is like this kind of stuff. It pulls people in.
Yeah.
And I'd be lying if I said it didn't have some influence on me at times. But the Book of Enoch, it talks about all these occult concepts and occult secrets that were forbidden, that shouldn't have made it to the earth, and they did. And in the book, they even talk about, I forget the passage. There is a part where they say, God is going to, God was worried. God made the flood because he was worried that the human beings were going to sort of be taken off the face of the earth. And I thought about it, and this is just my stupid take, but I thought, well, that's weird. Why would you? Okay, so you're worried your creation's going to be taken off the face of the earth. So why would you send a flood and kill 99.99% of the population? Like, wouldn't that make this even worse? But then I think what maybe he could have been saying is, it's a Tower of Babel story. They maybe were perfecting technology in some way. I don't know how to explain that, but perfecting technology so that they were going to seed the next, revolution of mankind, which is where we're living right now in a sort of Tower of Babel moment of technology, birthing AI. And I don't know. It's a little scary because then you start thinking, oh, we're living in the end times. And if you read, Ray Kurzweil was another one of these people I was into in the early 2000s after watching The Matrix. And I read his book that I don't remember which one it was. And he basically lays out the plan of the singularity and how, computers are going to take over. And I don't know that he's too far off. His schedule has it as 2045 as the year. And man, a lot can happen in 20 years. So we'll see. But I think we're going to be, guys like us, we're going to be facing some real decisions here, when we're in our 60s.
I think so too.
I think it's going to be tough. But yeah, the Book of let me throw another quick interesting thing that came to me when I was researching the Book of Enoch. The short version is that John Dee was an astrologer, an occultist who worked with Queen Elizabeth back in the 1500s. And he was making contact with entities, and these entities taught him the language, the Enochian language, they call it. And this Enochian language is used. They said, look, here's our language. This is how you talk to us. Go for it, or whatever. And he would have all these conversations, and they had visions about the end of the world and all this stuff. And then a couple hundred years later, Joseph Smith, the founder of the LDS Mormon Church, allegedly he used the same Enochian language, a ritualistic language, to make contact with an angel called Moroni that taught him all these secrets of, the Book of Mormon or whatever. Then after him came Aleister Crowley. Again, same thing. Used the Enochian language, made rituals called the Amelantra workings. In 1918, he makes contact with this gray alien called Lam. He drew it out. You can look it up on Google image search, LAM. And that's the first gray alien depiction in 1918. And it came from Crowley, who was a very devout occultist and magician. Then you got Jack Parsons, who in 1946, again, used a variation of the Yamalantra working using the same Enochian language and made contact with, I don't know words I can use on here, like the Scarlet Woman, the end times, the woman of Babylon there. And the whole time, Crowley and Parsons were talking about how they're going to bring about the end of the world, because Crowley was a Darby dispensationalist
Correct.
growing up.
Yes, that's a huge key thing that not enough people understand.
Yeah, so Crowley and Parsons and these black magic occultist types, they wanted to bring about the end times in the same way that Christian Zionists want to bring about the end times. They're just coming at it from two different angles.
Yes.
And most of us are just like, I just want to go on vacation next year. Can we not do this right now?
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But again, this is the elitist mindset, because they live on vacation. They don't care. They think there's something higher calling for them or something. So let me wrap it up with the Enochian thing, because what's interesting to me is that in 46, Parsons starts that ritual. Then in 47, we get the Roswell crash. So a lot of people said, oh, you know, in the conspiracy world, people in the occult realm, they say, oh yeah, Parsons was opening up portals. Even Aleister Crowley said, man, this guy's opening up portals and he's not closing them off, like this veil they open up to make contact with entities. And then in 47 is when they find the Book of Enoch. And I thought, isn't that insane? This thing was buried in this cave for hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years, this thing was buried away. And the same year that this Enochian language supposedly opened up a portal and we get Roswell, like that's the year we find it. Like that's bizarre, using the Enochian language. Right. I mean, I don't know. It just feels like it sort of blows your mind when you start getting a little paranoid about it and thinking about it, because it is really strange. But yeah, lots of weird stuff with the Book of Enoch.
Yeah. And you said, also want to clarify for some people, because you said, well, now that this thing happened in Miami, now there's bigger interest in it. I will say, when I first saw the footage, I was like, oh, give me a break. Like, why all of a sudden our cameras aren't high def anymore? I just see this kind of weird tall blur. Like, why are the cop cars perfect? And I still don't know what to think, but I did listen to your appearance on, geez, it's escaping me, but you just did
Confessionals.
Yes, the Confessionals.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I did not know this. And this interests me because I'm a firefighter. I've been one for over 25 years. The fact that many cops responded to a teenage fight and airspace was shut down, that is almost unheard of. If that happened, that's something way beyond what they told us is happening. If they shut down airspace, that doesn't happen. That is cost millions of dollars in second and third order effects. So what are your thoughts on what the heck happened there?
You know, it's interesting because when I first heard about it, because I'm pretty skeptical about a lot of things, and I don't jump right on it.
I will say I like that about your style of conspiracy stuff. Sometimes you hear guys like, it's almost like guys are Gnostic in a way, like, oh, I've got the secret knowledge and I know this. And you're always like, well, hold on, hit the brakes. Let's think about this. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And for what it's worth, it's not a good business angle. Because I've seen a lot of guys who are real sensational. They blow up way faster than I am, but I don't care. Like it doesn't matter to me. Like these things don't matter. I would love it. I would love to blow up and be on Joe Rogan, but I mean, if it never happens, I don't care. Because I'd rather have I give people, besides my name, I give people the honest take of what I think and how I operate. But the Miami Mall thing happened, and I saw these TikTok videos, and I was the same way. I was like, there's nothing definitive. Even to this day, I haven't seen one video that really persuaded me. But it is weird because at first it was, when I first heard about it, I looked it up. It was 2 kids fighting in the mall, and I thought, yeah, that's like 100 cop cars. They shut down 5 city blocks. Like that seems unbelievable. Then it was 4 kids fighting with sticks. Then it was 4 kids fighting with sticks and shooting fireworks at people. And that's when I thought, okay, well, maybe, I mean, if it was a mall, mass shooting, I don't know, maybe that would send 100 cops and shut down 5 blocks. I don't know. And then it was 50 kids and fireworks and all this stuff. And from what I understand, they really only arrested a few kids. Like there wasn't 50 kids in juvie or whatever. So I don't know if we're ever going to get a straight answer.
We won't.
What I do find is odd is that we haven't seen one clear video. We haven't seen one surveillance footage from the mall. I mean, they surely have surveillance footage of the mall. I've seen lots of videos. Again, I mean, this is just idiots on social media. Who knows? People clout chase for any reason. But I've seen eyewitness videos that were very persuasive from people that they explained what happened and they didn't profess to know all the answers. And this one guy was a graffiti artist and he was trying to draw out. He was like, man, I saw these kids with these glasses and they opened a box and the box started shooting stuff out of it. And I saw this blob come out of it. You know, again, like, I don't know. I mean, take it with a grain of salt, but it does seem weird because then the cops came out and they released a video where they said, look, there was nothing that happened here. It was like a polished studio video of a guy at a, I don't know if you saw this.
I'd not.
Okay, there was this cop like kind of at a desk and he was like, okay, we've been getting lots of reports and we just want to let people know this is not, you know, that's all conspiracy and this was just a normal thing, blah, blah, blah. And then the video wraps and he was like, if there was aliens, we would have told you. And there's an alien sitting next to him, like a joke, right? You know, like a visual effect they added. And it reminded me of in 1999, I think it was, when Fife Symington, the governor of Arizona, came out after the Phoenix Lights case. You remember the Phoenix Lights where they saw it was the largest mass sighting of UFOs ever in history? It was just hundreds.
I remember. I should. I feel dumb. No, I don't remember this.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, don't feel dumb. It was like thousands. Ironically, Kurt Russell was a pilot or is a pilot, and he was the first one to radio in from the skies. He said, there's these giant set of triangular lights. And he's like, I don't know what this is. Can you check on it? And everyone at the air traffic control or whatever said, I don't know. There's nothing on the thing. I don't know what that is. And then that night, I mean, hundreds. There's documentaries about the Phoenix Lights with it was the most eyewitnesses ever. There's video, and it's this giant. I mean, it must be a mile wide of this Delta craft, but you only see the lights, and it's just moving slowly over Phoenix. And it caused this huge uproar. And the governor come out the next day at a press conference and come out and said, oh, no, it's just flares from the military, which anyone who look up a video of aircraft flares, it looks absolutely nothing like these Phoenix Lights. I mean, that's gaslighting beyond any level. And at the end of the press conference, he goes, oh, well, wait a minute. We caught the person who did it. And it comes out this big alien guy in a suit, like a big joke, you know?
Right.
And a lot of people were offended by that because they experienced it and they said, no, dude, like that was something weird. And fast forward 20 years and Fife Symington come out, and I don't remember what documentary I saw it on, was on some UFO documentary, come out and was talking about how bad he felt because he lied to everybody. And he's like, yeah, they had this idea that we should do that. And I just went along with it. But in reality, we all were questioning what these lights were. We still don't know. And that's what this reminded me of with the Miami thing. So I don't know. It's so bizarre. We live in such a bizarre time where we're getting this weird sort of disclosure, but they're not quite telling us everything.
Yeah.
And then you got stuff like this with the Miami Mall thing. And I don't know. It's also bizarre. And again, Father Seraphim Rose, he talked about all this kind of stuff happening.
Yes. All right. Well, I won't keep you too much longer. You did say, I want to touch on Orthodoxy again. How has that helped you with the worldview, and as this information comes in with conspiracy stuff, and does the Orthodox lens indeed help?
Yeah. So I think everyone has, I think different spiritualities speak to people differently, and that includes Christianity. Like, for instance, you know, my mom, she loves her church, and I love that for her. Like, the Church of the Nazarene, like some people, that's the way they like to receive the message, and that's great for them. For me, it didn't work. It wasn't like I refused the teachings or thought it was all lies. It wasn't a community I really looked up to or wanted to be a part of, really, for whatever reason. But Orthodoxy I liked because they seem to have a very kind of a more of a spiritual side to me that was I don't know how to put it in words, more metaphysical, I guess, in a way.
Right.
And that spoke to me. And I like, and it's like, so I go to therapy every once a month now. And church is the same way as therapy to me. Because, people say in Orthodoxy, they tell us you're supposed to go to church when it's open because you're supposed to want to be in communion with God, and that's where God is, in the church. And church to me it's kind of like therapy, where it's very rare that I'm excited to go. I never really want to go. But whenever I'm there and I leave, it makes me feel better. It makes me feel a certain way, and I can't deny the effects that it has. So I think, and like with the icons, which are a controversial thing to people from the outside of the Orthodox Church, there's something beautiful in that, and the depictions they make on the icons are supposed to be sort of metaphysical in a way. They're supposed to say, it's not like out here in Utah, we've got, I call it the creed Jesus. They do paintings of the Mormons. They love these paintings of Jesus, and he's got like beautiful surfer hair and 6-pack abs, and the paintings are perfect depictions of a realistic kind of image. And in Orthodoxy, that's when you look at a icon of Christ, there's not, it doesn't look realistic. It looks a little different, and that's kind of the best example of what it feels like. You're overwhelmed by the senses when you go into the church, with the censers, and that's all done. It's very ritualistic. I guess that's the short way of saying it. The liturgy is very ritualistic, and I do believe in rituals having meaning and working. So yeah.
My friend Jason from the 2-Bit podcast says that ritual becomes the reality. And
that's good. Yeah.
That's across all kinds of, you can use that in occultism and whatnot, as you know. It's time for you to plug anything you'd like. You have a ton of books, the website, any platforms you're on.
Man, yeah. So I'm all over the place. If you go to allmylinks.com/Isaac W, you'll find links to everything. But my podcast, subscribe to my podcast. It's called Occult, Symbolism, and Pop Culture. I'll be releasing that Book of Enoch one here, and I'm following it up with a 2-hour dive into John Dee with a guest that I have. That's going to be really, really informative into these sort of, if you want to look at the world through the angle of the end times and aliens, because those are very important concepts to understand. So if people will subscribe, they'll catch those shows. What else? You can follow me on Instagram at Isaac Weishaupt. Good luck spelling it. What else is there? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But the allmylinks.com/Isaac W is where you can find links to my books, which are on Amazon and Audible. I narrated them for Audible. All 9 of them are on there. And that's about it. I'm doing it on the Patreon, the ad-free feed with all the bonus shows. I'm doing, like you said, I'm doing the Twin Peaks journey, which Twin Peaks really grabbed me. One last thought I wanted to share with you.
For sure.
I look up to people who watched this show in the 90s when it first came out. I wish, if I had a short list of time travel experiences, I wish I could go back as a, what was I, like 12 or something, and watch those shows as a kid, and then the movie, of course, and then wait the 25 years to watch season 3. And I could see why you tapped out on season 3, because when I first watched it, this Dougie character was like, slapping me up the wall. I was like, this is stupid. What are we watching here? But if you can make it, first you got to make it to, the first few episodes are bangers. Then it kind of gets weird.
Yeah.
You got to get to episode 8. Episode 8 will blow your mind. Then it kind of slows down a little bit, but you get to the last 2 episodes. It's quite the experience. Anyway, I'm going through that on the Patreon feed, so that's another option. So yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for letting me soapbox for you so long, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah, Isaac, man, thank you so much for being here on Counterflow.
Of course, thanks.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed the chat with Isaac, and in the near future, I will be on his show. So look for that. Of course, after this interview, I know you're going to be subscribing to all of his content, which I do as well. Like I mentioned in the interview, I'm a Patreon donor. And to become one of those for this show, you go to patreon.com/counterflow. $5 a month or more get you into the exclusive club, and we will do our monthly Zoom sessions with all of you and a special guest every month. It's a very, very good time. Let's see. Counterflowpodcast.com. Follow me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. And next week, I will be very excited to bring you one of the biggest rising voices, let's say on the right side of the political aisle. He's Gen Z, he's brilliant, he's very articulate, and a lot of fun to talk to. There's your hints. Who is it? Tune in and see. Have a good one. We'll see ya.
You get split in half, but I call him the hologram brass. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.